This wire mesh, it might be 12 feet tall. If that, is very easy for anybody to come across by going over it or through it. If they want to get vehicles through, what they'll do is they'll just cut it and lay it down and run vehicles through. They'll just cut a certain portion of the fence and drive the whole vehicle into the United States from Mexico full of drugs. We've caught vehicles loaded with up to 3,000 pounds of marijuana in them. Helping to secure the border, I think we need much more than just a wall or a fence or a barrier. There's a lot of other components, I think, that need to be thrown into place to help secure the border. As far as manpower, funding, technology, infrastructure.
Donald Trump is helping terror group ISIL with his immigration order. That's the view of the UK Home Secretary Amber Rudd, as she joins a chorus of EU politicians expressing criticism of the new president.
It is divisive and wrong. ISIL and Daesh will use any opportunity they can to make difficulties, to create the environment that they want, to radicalise people, to bring them over to their side. So it is a propaganda opportunity for them, potentially.
Let's bring in RT's Laura Smith for analysis on this. Good morning to you, Laura. Why does the UK appear to be less keen to cozy up to America all of a sudden?
Well, you know, as Amber Rudd says, he is a divisive figure, both in the United States and here. And we do see anti-Trump sentiment intensifying, both on the streets and in Parliament. We know now that on the 20th of February, the British Parliament will debate the issue of Donald Trump having been invited for a state visit by Theresa May. Now, that's no ordinary visit. A state visit is where he would be hosted by the Queen, dinners, state banquets, all sorts of pomp and circumstance. And it's an honour that's usually not accorded to leaders until they've been in office for a little while. But Theresa May, of course, extended this invitation during her visit to Washington. And there's now a petition on the Parliament website against it, which has attracted nearly 1.8 million signatures. And that means that it has to be debated in Parliament. Here, though, is a taste of what that debate might include from serial straight-talking MP Dennis Skinner. Let's hear him.
Will the Foreign Secretary, just for a moment, try to recall, along with me, as I hid underneath the stairs when two fascist dictators, Mussolini and Hitler, were raining bombs on towns and cities in Britain. Now this government's hand in hand with another fascist, Trump.
Strong words there from Dennis Skinner. That's in Parliament, but on the street too, as I said, there have been mass protests on here in the wake of Trump's refugee ban in the US. On Monday night, there were several thousand people out on the streets in London, a lot of them chanting "Shame on May." 3,000 people in Manchester and in other cities across the country.
Laura, is the whole anti-Trump rhetoric, is it confined to just being within the UK, or is it rippling perhaps across the EU as well?
Absolutely not confined to the UK. There are effects of it in the EU as well. The EU now considers Trump's America a threat to be mentioned in the same sentence as ISIL. Here's Donald Tusk.
Worrying declarations by the new American administration all make our future highly unpredictable. So many are becoming openly anti-European or Eurosceptic at best. Particularly the change in Washington puts the European Union in a difficult situation.
So this is really an extraordinary situation, and we're only 12 days into Trump's presidency. He's managed to divide popular opinion, really from best friends to enemies. And despite May's efforts to pragmatically bridge that gap, she's making herself a lot of enemies in her own country. And don't forget that, according to the EU, the other threats are Russia and China. So geographically, the European Union really does look quite hemmed in.
All right, RT's Laura Smith live in London at RT UK. Thank you. Well, earlier we did discuss the warnings about Trump's America coming from the EU, that is, regarding our guests. Have a listen.
Clearly panicky. They're panicking. Not only Mr. Tusk, who is appalled, by the way, and of course who puts Russia among the enemies. If Europe is disintegrating, which is unfortunately reality, it's not because of Mr. Trump. It's not because of ISIS. It's because the Europeans don't believe in it anymore, and that they don't deliver a good work, neither in Parliament, nor the Council, nor the European Commission. That's clear to all now. I mean, we could see the end of the euro this year, and we blame Donald Trump. I mean, this is ridiculous.
In fact, Mr. Trump, President Trump, with his policy and the step he made in his first 10 days, in office, is just challenging the basic tenet of the EU, globalism, about climate, about refugee. Is doing exactly the reverse than the EU has been doing for the last, 10 or 15 years, with all the failure that we know. And I think that they do not know really how to cope with this new reality, and therefore the panic, and therefore also the kind of statement.
President Trump signed an executive order to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexican border, but there has been fencing in El Paso since the 1980s, and it's been significantly enhanced over the years, especially in 2007 when large steel fencing was installed. Locals believe it's improved safety for both residents and law enforcement.
From an officer safety standpoint, from a managing the border standpoint, it's very effective.
Reyes says before Operation Hold the Line in the early 90s, about 10,000 illegal immigrants crossed the border into El Paso every day.
Fence has been very effective in that 20-mile area.
The Border Patrol declined to comment on camera for the story, but in a written statement said the fencing has effectively deterred illegal immigration, along with the Department of Homeland Security and law enforcement. Retired Border Patrol agent Martin Wilson agrees the fencing has made El Paso safer.
It is a big deterrent. It is effective in that sense. It gives us that deterrence, and it gives us time, and with the proper resources, then we can be more effective.
Doreen Brown says she considered moving her business away from the border because she saw people running inside her warehouse to hide from Border Patrol, and she found families sleeping there overnight. That changed when this portion of the fence went up 5 years ago.
We haven't had a single person cross, not one.
Brown says she's grateful for the fencing and the Border Patrol who keep her business safe. In El Paso, Texas, Ray Bogan, Fox News.